This is Glenmar Hefka, and you're listening to The Other Side of the Bell.
Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of the Bell, a podcast dedicated to everything trumpet, brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass. We'll help you take your trumpet playing to the next level. I'm John Snell, trumpet specialist here at Bob Reeves Brass, and I'll be your host for this episode. Joining me today is trumpeter, educator, and coach, Ashley Hall-Tighe. We'll get to Ashley's interview here in a moment after a word from our sponsor and some trumpet news. Today's episode is brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass, who share your passion for creating extraordinary music. You know that feeling when your instrument just clicks and the music flows effortlessly? That's what Bob Reeves Brass has been helping customers do since 1968. We've helped brass musicians like you achieve their dreams by ensuring their equipment is always in perfect harmony. We know you want to immerse yourself in the art of music making, and we're here to remove any barriers between you and your creative vision. Bob Reeves Brass is truly your one-stop shop for everything you need to fuel your passion and create music that touches hearts and souls. So go ahead, let us help you elevate your sound to new heights. Don't wait another moment to elevate your musical journey with Bob Reeves Brass. Connect with us at bobreeves.com, shoot us an email at info@bobreeves.com, and keep up with the latest news on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Bob Reeves Brass. Embrace your passion for music and let Bob Reeves Brass be your partner in creating the extraordinary. Well, first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to all the new followers and subscribers we have. The last couple episodes, both Kenny Rampton and Lee Loughnane, we got a lot of feedback on our YouTube channel and directly via our social media channels and email. So thank you. Welcome, new listeners. You have quite the backlog of trumpet content that you can go through. Only 130 some odd episodes now. So that should keep you busy when you're not practicing or when you're on the treadmill or commuting to and from gigs. And also a huge thank you to Lee and Kenny for being on the podcast. Want to keep the news relatively short today. Now that we're doing 2 episodes a month, there's only so much you can hear me talk about where we're traveling and valve alignments and all the mouthpieces we bring and guard bags, etc. However, listen to this. There's a new group here in town, here in LA, that we've been honored to sponsor from their infancy when they were just starting out. It's the Los Angeles Brass Alliance, also known as Lab A. So their next concert is coming up. If you're in the LA area, you're not going to want to miss this. May 4th at 7 p.m. at the Glendale First Baptist Church. It's their second installation of Next Up. It's a free concert, generously sponsored by us, by Bob Reeves Brass. But Next Up spotlights Lab A's annual collaboration between emerging LA-based composers and brass musicians. Lab A strongly believes that students, freelancers, and performers are responsible for ensuring the rich and vibrant future of brass performance. This concert is an investment in their musicians, these incredible composers, and the accessibility of new music to the Los Angeles brass audiences. Their 2025 composer cohort hails from institutions such as Jacobs School at Indiana University, the Herb Alpert School at UCLA, the Thornton School at USC, the Yale School of Music, the University of Northern Colorado, and Cal State Northridge. Go Matadors. These 8 composers have written for every flavor of brass ensemble, from quintet to brass orchestra, pushing the boundaries of music for brass ensemble. Lab A hopes to see you on May 4th in Glendale for their season finale and the celebration of these 8 new works for brass. More information is available at labrassalliance.org, or check out Los Angeles Brass Alliance on Instagram to keep up with their preparation for Next Up 2025. And if you didn't catch all that, we'll make sure we have the links to their website, to their social media, and information for the concert. Again, May 4th at 7 p.m. here in Glendale, California. Composers, 8 great compositions and new works. So, as I had mentioned early on, they're really doing amazing things at Lab A. Lots of great commissioning of new works or featuring young composers and giving young brass players an outlet to play together, to network, to be coached, things like that. And that's exactly what Bob Reeves Brass believes in, and need more of that. for the next generation of fine musicians, whether professional or semi-professional or just as hobbyists. So we're proud to sponsor that organization and this concert, and we're looking forward to doing more with them in the future. A quick bullet point for our travel. I think I jumped the gun on the Dylan music trip. I know a number of you have emailed about the dates for that, and I'm looking at the calendar, and I don't think we're going to be able to get that out there before this summer. There's just not enough weeks between now and all the upcoming events. So I'm sorry for prematurely getting you excited about our trip to Dylan. It is going to happen, I promise. They're very busy. We're obviously very busy, and just finding a weekend where it works is difficult. So my apologies for getting everyone excited the last few episodes, but it does not look like that's going to happen the next few weeks up until summer. What is going to happen? Here's the bullet points. Coming up first is IWBC, Memorial Day weekend, May 19th to the 25th, I believe is the full conference, and then the vendors are the 21st to the 24th of May. That's at the Hart School in Hartford, Connecticut. We will be in the vendor room. Again, proud to sponsor that conference. IWBC, the International Women's Brass Conference, May 19th to the 25th. I hope to see you there. BobReeves.com/IWBC is where you'll be able to pre-book your alignment for that event. And myiwbc.org is the link to register for the conference. The following week, International Trumpet Guild Conference, Salt Lake City, Utah. University of Utah, right there, just kind of northeast of downtown. Beautiful campus. We were there for ITF a few years ago. And BobReeves.com/ITG is where you'll get all the information for that conference, at least as far as Bob Reeves Brass is concerned. And you can pre-book your alignment. They're booking up fast, so if you're going to go, no pressure, but get there sooner than later to book your alignment. That is the following week after Memorial Day. So that's May 28th, I think, to the 31st. Trumpet Guild, the International Trumpet Guild website will have all that information, and BobReeves.com/ITG. I get a week off in between to see my family and to decompress, and then I fly out to Clarksville, Tennessee, Austin Peay University. Rob Waugh is hosting the William Adam Trumpet Festival this year. That's a wonderful time just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Clarksville, I believe, is about an hour out. And I'll be giving a presentation there on acoustics, equipment, and knowing me, I probably will not talk about equipment very much and get right to why we do what we do. You know, what's the meaning of life? Getting right to the root of the subject. June 19th to the 22nd is going to be the William Adam Trumpet Festival. If you go to williamadamtrumpet.com, you can get all the information to attend the festival. And if you go to bobreeves.com/William Adam, you will get the link to pre-book your valve alignments. And that's another popular festival. Last year, I did a 17-hour day. This is not to brag, but I just can't say no to people. There were so many alignments at the last Adam Festival. I did alignments from 7 in the morning to 11:45 at night, one of the days. And I don't want to do that again. I will if I have to, but I'd much rather have everyone pre-book, and so we know what we're going to do, how many we're going to do, and we can plan around that. So the link for that, bobreeves.com/William Adam. I got in trouble for prematurely talking about the Dylan music thing, but I do want to mention that after William Adam, I'll be going to Europe. I don't know where yet. I know I'm going to the UK to see an F1 race. It's something non-trumpet related, but I'm going to try to book some dates in and around Scandinavia, maybe the UK. So tune in here, tune in on our social media for potential details for that. Okay, I promised to keep it short. It was relatively short. Thank you for listening. Let's get right to my special guest today, Ashley Hall-Tighe. Today's guest is internationally renowned trumpeter, educator, and certified life coach Ashley Hall-Tighe. Praised by the Cincinnati Enquirer for her warm tone, stunning technique, and expressive artistry, Ashley has captivated audiences worldwide, performing everywhere from the Sydney Opera House to Beijing's National Center for the Performing Arts. She currently serves as principal trumpet of the Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra and recently completed a global tour as a member of the iconic Canadian Brass. Ashley recently released her solo debut album, Upcycle, featuring trumpet and piano transcriptions written by her husband, Nathaniel Tighe. Passionate about holistic education and personal growth, Ashley has taught trumpet at institutions such as St. Olaf College and the Longy School of Music, where she founded their career coaching program. Ashley is currently on the trumpet faculty at the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. And now, here's my interview with Ashley Hall-Tighe. Joining us on the other side of the bell today, all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio, is Ashley Hall-Tighe. Ashley, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, John. Nice to see you.
Likewise. And you still got snow up there, or is it...
It's turning to spring, but this morning, all the little buds on the trees did get some frost. And so it's in that in-between time here in Cincinnati.
Well, I'm in my short sleeves. It was 80 degrees yesterday, so typical LA.
Yes.
But enough about that. Let's talk about the trumpet, and let's start right from the beginning. How did the trumpet find you, or did you seek out the trumpet?
Yeah, my mom has degrees in music education and French horn performance. And so brass playing was always kind of a part of our family growing up. And I grew up listening to actually cornet solos. The recordings of Herbert L. Clark really caught my ear, and it felt very curious to me to be able to do this kind of music. So I started on the cornet, and my mom was my first teacher in the middle of my 5th grade year, which was actually before our band program started. We started in the 6th grade in this very small town in Southwest Virginia. And so she gave me kind of my initial introduction to the cornet. Of course, the recordings were my introduction too. And yeah, so I always say she was my first teacher, and then things really took off quite quickly. I started mid 5th grade, and then by the 6th grade, I was marching in the high school marching band. It felt
Really?
very much like a immediate fit for me. It's not that I didn't struggle, but it's that I took off really fast. And I think, again, it was because I just grew up listening to this, and the sound was already so much in my body. And so, yeah, I started marching in the high school band in 6th grade, and then entered my first national competition. It was in 1994, the second year of the national trumpet competition,
Wow.
which just happened, as we all know.
I was just there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went in the 7th grade and won the junior high division in 1994. And that was really my first entry to kind of the world of intense performing, I would say. I had a lot of just quirky habits as it relates to how do you present yourself on a stage. And I learned so many of my most important lessons about how we show up both authentically and professionally from those early years at the National Trumpet Competition. So, yeah.
I was thinking 7th grade, I was playing Super Mario Brothers. And you're learning how to present yourself on stage.
Well, I played the Herbert L. Clark Stars in a Velvety Sky, and
wow.
And that is what I won with. And then because at that point they didn't really know if they would let young kids then play in the high school division, so Denny Edelbrock invited me to come back and play the Hummel, third movement of the Hummel Trumpet Concerto, with a group that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called the Capitol Winds Ensemble. It was a DC-based band. And I came with my B-flat trumpet, the only trumpet that I had, and I played the third movement of the Hummel for the NTC crowd. But what's funny about that is I was just this little country girl from Southwest Virginia, and I didn't know that ensembles tend to tune to a concert A. And so right there in front of all of the trumpet players that you can imagine, the oboist gives me a nice concert A, and not having perfect pitch myself, I lay down a lovely concert B flat, and and I still remember the audible gasp followed by "Aw, she's so cute, this little 8th grader." And so I turned to the oboist and I am like, "Could you please play me a concert B flat?" And she's like, "Oh, sure. So she gives me the note, and then I play the, third movement of the concerto. And again, NTC was really my playground for learning all of these different skills. And I was incredibly raw when I first started. So
amazing.
Yeah, fun.
Yes. Well, so you went to 0 to 60 pretty quickly then. If you started in 5th grade, I'm doing the math here, and by 7th grade, you're playing, Herbert L. Clark solos.
Truly.
Was it just, you picked up the horn and it felt natural to you?
It did. Yeah. I still remember
things like
same
that.
Thing. It's strange because my mom sort of told me, this is what you do when you double tongue, and this is what you do to triple tongue. And I went up to my bedroom and I heard her say to my dad, she's doing it. Like, that's what you do. That's how you do it. So there was a lot of natural propensity towards this very light cornet solo repertoire that felt very much innate and organic to kind of how I wanted to be, and the sound that I would say is absolutely true of me now at 43. So yeah, that did definitely happen. We'll get to some of the later parts of my journey soon, but I would say that the cornet repertoire, especially these Herbert L. Clarke solos and a little bit of the Arban solos, played really to my strengths at the time. And I kind of had a big open aperture, which meant that I could honk low notes and virtuosic stuff up to about a high C all day long. But anything beyond that, I didn't have much flexibility. And I can talk about how that sort of broke down over time later. But that was kind of my early days. A lot of cornet stuff, a lot of Artunians, realizing that I loved doing this for people and that being on stage made me truly happy, that I loved to perform and to play music for people. And I was pretty good at it. So that also is good when you're a kid. So
that always helps. So you mentioned that you had your mom starting you off. Was it some point that she handed over the reins to someone else?
She did. Yeah, pretty quickly. I was in around middle of 6th grade, 7th grade. There was a local trumpet teacher by the name of Mark Alderman who was a member of the International Trumpet Guild. And he introduced us to this whole world. And he said, you should become a member here. And this is what the iron studies are. And this is what you can do with this. And so he was really my first formal trumpet teacher. Yeah. And then he's the one that also introduced me to the National Trumpet Competition and said, I think you should go and just give this a shot. I have no idea where you're going to stack up, but I think you're really good. And then it was probably the 9th grade. I knew that, I was still competing. I was playing solos like Rustiques and Legend and auditioning for these summer festivals. I went to Brevard when I was in the 9th grade and then EMF in the 10th grade and kind of knocked off some of these festivals kind of early. But I knew that in my sophomore or freshman year, I needed to kind of up the trumpet teacher level. And so my father called the trumpet teacher at Virginia Tech University at the time. His name is Alan Batchelder. And I remember my dad calling and saying, I've got this, my daughter is really good and she's been entering some competitions and I think she could really benefit from kind of a college level professor. And he's like, I don't take high school kids, but I'm happy to just have her come and let her play for me once. But just my standard is pretty much, I don't have time and I really got to stay with my college crew. And I remember I went in and played for him and he was like, I will take her. Yes. And so I worked with him for all the rest of my years of high school. And he kept pushing me to enter all these different competitions. And I competed a lot against not just trumpet players too. I entered, there's a really, I don't even know if it's prominent or not now, but Montgomery, Alabama, the Montgomery Symphony Orchestra had a concerto competition for high school kids. And the top prize was $10,000, which is really significant. And I was maybe a junior when I won that contest. And so this really did set me up. I say that a lot of my inner struggles that I've had to really work through around competition, defining my worth, came as a result of this time, but also competition was the essential place where I grew and had a pulse on who was great out there and had a sense for I'm trying to become an artist like these people that I'm hearing that I can't quite get to yet. And so I'm thankful that competitions have a mix for me really. And when I think about what they are and what they meant, but really it set me up not only to work on these skills that I do now as a soloist, but to develop the professional skills that I've needed that have carried me and the networking that has been essential to, setting me up for my career.
Yeah, having just gone to the national trumpet competition. Sorry, waiting for my coffee to hit. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around that kind of dichotomy between, well, it's a competition and it forces you to be your best and to really dig deep, but then also it's trumpet, it's music, it's an art form, it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be a connection to the audience, not ticking off boxes kind of thing. So how do you wrap your head around it, especially at such a young age and then now as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, at such a young age, it was my world. Competing became the world that I existed in, and I I don't know how much of it was just the environment I grew up in, that I loved it and I thrived in it. And I was always looking to like beat that kid that was based here and that came in second to me, or that I came in second to. So yes, but I would say competition culture. Number one, I talk about this quite a lot, is that even in our little band program, we had a sign that hung above the band room, proscenium, whatever you call it, like the place where the conductor is. And it said, second place is the first loser. And I say this in a lot of the classes that I teach now, that internalizing messages like that and having competition be the thing that kind of set up my musical career, kind of messed me up a little bit. So, I had a lot of kind of unwinding to do in separating my worth and identity as a human being, separate from winning the top prize, separate from playing a perfect concert or not. Like, all of those things get really messy and intertwined. And it's taken me a long time to do the work that's necessary to show up bravely and authentically, and to know that whether you come in fifth or second or first, like, if you showed up and performed to the best of your ability with the connection that you wanted to bring, then that is what success ultimately means. But that wasn't the message that was driven into me when I was really young. And it, like I said, it's taken a lot of decades of work to kind of unwind some of those internal and external things that I was living in when I was young.
Fascinating. And we'll get into those a little bit deeper later. I want to talk about your kind of the decisions into going into college. I mean, it seems, based on your excellence and the things you're doing, there is really no other choice than music. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. So that was pretty much taken care of. What about your choice of schools for college? Your audition process?
The National Trumpet Competition really was this place where these professors started to kind of say, like, hey, Ashley, check out this place. And hey, Ashley, what do you think about this? And there was one trumpet teacher, his name is Alan Siebert, who was at the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, who did the most incredible job of everyone of recruiting me from the 8th grade all the way up until the point that I was ready to sign on the dotted line. And he was diligent in sending my parents emails like, hey, just letting you know I'm still here and still really excited about Ashley and her life and what she's up to. And I really hope she looks at Cincinnati. That was incredible. And it made a big impression on our family. And yes, I auditioned at Eastman and got into Eastman, but really Cincinnati had already very much been on my radar because of the way that Alan recruited me, to be honest. So I auditioned there. I was really good in academics as well. So I got really great academic scholarships, and it was pretty obvious this was not going to cost my family any money for us to be able to go to Cincinnati, and for this to be a really good decision for me. So I said yes to CCM and studied with Alan my very first year, and then was given kind of a chance to sort of look at the other teachers that were there. And at the time, Marie Speziali was still on faculty at CCM, and she was not teaching many people, but I really wanted to study with her. And so I was able to work out a scenario to become her private student along with one other student at the time. And I studied with her for my sophomore and junior years at CCM. And then she made the full break from CCM to go to IU fully, and also at Rice. So she wasn't doing anything more at CCM. And so I was able to study with Phil Collins my final year. So I know you have a connection with Phil as well. But
what a trio, though. What a trio of teachers. That's amazing. Yeah. So where did they take your playing? I mean, here comes this, promising young soloist who's won competitions, and, where did they take your playing?
Yeah. I mean, I think initially Alan wanted to kind of shift a couple of things with my embouchure. I think he instinctively knew that there was a little bit of inefficiency in the way that I was actually set up. But I think the way that he did it was like with those embouchure visualizers and like trying to like have me do something in order to create a little bit more of a directional approach. And it wasn't where I was at 18, but I think instinctively he was on the right track, that there was something not quite set up well for the long game for me. I wasn't ready to look at it. I was still happy to be like flashy cornet soloist Ashley.
Yeah.
When I got to Marie, though, she definitely started to hear and see a lot more of those inconsistencies. And I think that as I started to get just a little bit older, the window that it took for my lips to repair in the way that I was playing back then just took a little bit longer. And so I would go through really big dips of inefficiency where I trusted a lot in the muscle tissue itself, like the exact spot that the lips would go and how my lips felt. And it was always dependent on this little tiny tissue being exactly right. And if it wasn't right, then it wouldn't work. Like it just didn't sound good. And so she thought some of it, we explored all kinds of different things. But again, the hard part about that age for me was that I sounded really good when I sounded really good, that no one quite could figure out what would happen when I sounded really bad. And so it was really tricky, I think, to kind of parse out what was fundamentally happening with my chops and with my production and my way of playing. And I think some of it is that we didn't want to really mess with it because when it was good, it was fine. Phil got me when it broke down. So my senior year at CCM, I remember going to a practice room and it was one of those times, maybe I'd played like something really big and then it was in one of those seasons that it needed to kind of repair, but I couldn't play above the staff and nothing was working. And I think that was the first time that I finally said, like, I don't know if I want to do this trumpet thing anymore in this way, at least. Like, I don't think I have the skills right now or the knowledge of my anatomy, physiology, how this all works to be able to even improve. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And we worked with that all year, my senior year. And I'll get into who like really helped me a couple of years later in a second. But my senior year was tough. And I remember Phil like going to the Cincinnati Symphony colleagues there and being like, I've got this student and she sounds amazing. And then she doesn't sound amazing. And I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to help her. And I didn't know what to do either because, what's hard about my career is that like when it worked, it sounded really, really great. And I even won my first job right out of undergrad with the third trumpet in the Dayton Philharmonic, like playing with the setup I used to have. And what I've come to realize now is that essentially I used to play kind of dry and I would take the mouthpiece and I'd kind of like tighten it, move it in to where I would create this really open aperture here in the middle. And then it would have this very like heavy, big, wide sound, but it would be pinned up against my teeth. And so the more that I went up into the upper register or pushed on it at all, it would basically be like taking a donut and pushing it between two pieces of plexiglass. And the more that I pushed and the heavier I pushed, then the more the vibration would stop and it would not be flexible anymore. And it came to its first like crash my senior year, but then it came more when the repertoire got harder and harder. And there was a concerto I was supposed to premiere that had some pedals and had some high Ds. And I went and played it for the composer, Steve Wintereg, and I couldn't play really above the staff. And he's like, Ashley, like, what are you going to do? Like, you have to play this with an orchestra next week. And I was almost to the point where I was ready to like actually start doing the work, but I wasn't there yet. And at that point I just said, well, I'm just going to pray. Like, I'm a person of faith. And so I'm just going to like pray and God's going to help me. And we're just going to do this thing. And that's what I did. I went and I like did it and I played the concerto and it didn't go badly. And that was my life until I was about 26. And I kept doing, this level of playing and this level of like, is it going to work? I don't know. Let's see. And I remember then finding a teacher in Boston and his name is Steve Emery. And he has this really wonderful mix of like deep understanding of how the trumpet works and physiology works, but also like how faith plays into this and how identity plays into this and how we can get all up in our heads about all of these different things. And he said to me, because he was able to meet me where I was at the time around the faith that I kind of had and have at the time. And he said, do you ever think, I'll never forget when he said this, do you ever think that David wondered if his like armor was going to work when he went into battle? And he was like, I don't think that like this is supposed to be the rest of your life. Like that you're going to always have this question, are things going to work today? He's like, I want to teach you and help you develop a system that you can trust, that yields, consistency and reliability, where you can play the trumpet from a place of trust and freedom and suppleness. And I was like, well, that sounds great, because that's never been my life.
Sign me up. Sign me up. Where do I get? Where do I sign up? Right?
And he's like, yes, there's like aspects to our playing that require repair and patience. And, we may have a concert that's really heavy and we need to take a little time to let this relax, but never to the point that you're talking about now. That's my goal for you. And so I took a leave of absence from the Dayton Philharmonic, where I had my job. And I took 2 years and went and studied with Steve at the Longy School of Music and did an artist diploma there. And that was really where I was ready. Like, I was at the age where I was ready to then start to look at this stuff, and decide whether or not, like, I'm either going to figure out how to play this in the most relaxed and efficient way possible, or I just don't want to play the trumpet anymore. I'm just kind of done. Like, and so that was really the beginning, was that time with Steve and the stuff that we worked on, and then where we are now.
That's incredible. And it's kind of like, think that here you are, you're graduated from school, you have your first job, you're working professionally in a town that you're developing a network, and then to essentially give all of that up. That's a big risk.
It was a big risk. Yeah. And I remember making that decision I didn't even tell my parents. I remember, like, I signed on the line. I worked on the loan, like the graduate loan documents for my, taking out money. And I really wanted it to be something that I owned, and that I wasn't taking on all of the opinions of, that's ridiculous, Ashley. Like, you have all these things. Why would you then go back and do this without this guarantee of this even working for you or setting you up for anything? So I didn't ask anybody or tell anybody until I knew I was ready to move to Boston, other than, of course, Steve and these little conversations I was having. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So you pick up, you move there, work with Steve, and what kind of things did he have you do? How did he build your confidence up and get your embouchure?
So we started first with the body and the breath, and kind of addressing the myths around breathing and things that I had internalized about how we interface with the instrument. I don't know how much of this is my work now and with Steve, but we talked a lot about relaxation and passive expiration, and how do we take in air and let air go, and use the natural respiratory system to power our instruments in the most efficient and relaxed way possible. And I think all of us internalize messages as we're going on our journeys as brass players, around pushing from the diaphragm, or push with the air, all these things that we do and internalize that end up not being super useful. So I needed to kind of break it down to the granular level and figure out, again, how I naturally breathe, and then how I can maintain natural breathing when I pick up the instrument. And then I remember it was at least the first 3 to 6 months, just playing kind of low C's, low G's, breath attacks, and trying to get, first of all, the lips to not be impinged and kind of pinned up against the back of my teeth, the front of my teeth rather, but more like the sails of a sailboat receiving air and changing directions, away from the teeth and supple. And I did that with a lot of air starts, breath attacks, embracing sort of crackly sound at first until things start to become smaller, until the chops touch and then are flexible. And that kind of training, like I said, I wouldn't have been ready for it until I was in my mid-20s, right? Because that just takes hours of being willing to sit with yourself and be patient with yourself and let things start to settle and let go. But that's the work that I did for the first little bit of my time there.
And let me. I will make sure I heard you correctly. You said 4 to 6 months of playing just low C's, low G's.
Yeah, I didn't play anything hard, any major repertoire. I just sat with my sound.
Wow, it's just incredible to think about that kind of dedication.
Yeah,
knowing all of the career you had up until that point.
Thanks.
Some of the folks I've worked with that, things tend to come easier to them, or they had a quick start, so to speak. It's really hard for them to slow down and start at zero again. That's incredible.
It is.
and very inspiring. It's nice to know that that's possible.
I think it's important sometimes. I think it was hard, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that I was pairing this work alongside therapy, because I needed to also kind of unwind these other messages and that's when I started to do some of this deeper inner work, right? So that the patience that I needed to be able to sit there with my sound, I wasn't then spiraling of like, what's wrong with you? Like, this is a big waste of your time. You had this huge career, right? All the stuff that we would say to ourselves. And I needed to have everything like sort of settled and separate in a sense from me. The human will be okay if the trumpet it never comes back. And that was the thing that I also had to kind of unwind and figure out. And I've done that in various ways throughout the last even 15 years. But it's really hard work. You're right. Because you love this because you want to make music and you want to do it at a high level. But this kind of settling and letting things relax and recover and kind of relearning the interface between breath and lips and balance and efficiency, it takes retraining and time. And that was what I was there for. So
was there a point where things started to kick in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I got glimpses of it all the time. I think when you're doing this work, you're still having to oscillate between two habits, this new habit that you're really starting to build and the old default habits that, you've been playing for the last 15 years of your life. And so where this would really be hard is when I would go to repertoire, or especially repertoire that I had old habits on, because all of the old stuff would still be there and my body would remember. This kind of gets me into something that I teach a lot now, is that whenever we're growing in efficiency and things are starting to really settle and things are changing in our playing, it's really common that we would go back to something we might have played for the first time in high school and everything just goes to crap. And you're like, what? Why can I not play pictures at an exhibition? Like, why am I gripping in this way, this really weird way for this A flat thing? I don't do that anymore. But you do, because your body remembers instinctively how many times you did it when you were 15. And so I learned a lot from Steve, and also have kind of intuitively learned for myself over these last 15 years, developing systems and a different kind of approach to practice generally. That we have to also retrain on old repertoire, the new habit that you are now, like how you play now. And for me, that's taking pictures, for instance. Like, I had to relearn it on a different key horn. So I would pick up the E flat, and I would make sure that everything that I'm doing reflects kind of the way that I play today, and that it's just an F to F jump, and it's easy and it's in balance and it's not gripped, as I jump to the upper note. And then with enough of that training, I have that sound and that way of modeling in my body. I can usually then go back to the C with time and emulate the habit that I just now integrated. But again, that stuff, it's hard. It takes a lot of patience to do that. So.
But that's brilliant, though, retraining on a different keyed horn to rework those neural pathways that connected your old habits. I mean, not to make light of that, but my son does the same thing. He one of the first things he learned on trumpet was the John Cena theme, and now that he's gotten much better on the instrument, but he still wants to play the John Cena theme, and he sounds like he's been playing for 2 days.
Isn't it so funny?
But it's exactly it. He goes right back to how he used to play. Maybe I'll work it. Maybe I'll give him a C trumpet and say, Elwood, learn how to play this on C trumpet. There we go.
Absolutely.
So, well, here's the other thing. I mean, during this time, I'm assuming you're also playing in the school groups, like the orchestras and chamber music and things like that. I mean, was that also difficult? At
times, yeah. Like I said, I was able to oscillate a little bit between the old habits and the new. That process is frustrating, of course, because you're trying to really do this deep work, with Steve and the stuff I was trying to develop. And of course, then I had to still play some. I was pretty good at advocating for myself, though. If there was a piece that was just going to get me too far off track in the work that I was trying to do, I would just say, like, I just can't. That's not where I am right now, and I'm here to do this work. But I mean, the foundation work that I did with Steve was absolutely essential, and I come back to it still today for the growth that I made and the player that I am now. And I, in 2008, won my principal trumpet job that I still have now with the Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra. And that was the first gig that I did post rebuild, right? And I can't stress enough to to people how important it is that when you know there are these inefficiencies, to find the right kind of teacher who can help you with like the physical and mental sides of this work, because it's as much of a mental game of patience and trust as it is the physical work that it takes to do it. And that's been true really since I took that break at 26 all the way till now, and the work I continue to do.
Was there a point, was it while you were there at school, that you realized you're now back on track? Or, I mean, how long was that process?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, it's hard to say. Like, I would say that my artist diploma recital, I had much better sense of, oh, I'm really playing in a really different way than I used to. Like my senior recital at CCM, I was not sure if I was going to make it through, or my lip's going to die, or like, was it going to work, you know? But that recital, I was like, I had a much better system of habits and trust, that I didn't have as strong of thoughts that this wasn't going to go well, or that something was going to break down. Mm-hmm. I think that was where it started, but I think it deepened actually post graduate work. And I find this with students to be true actually quite a lot as well, that when we get out of the school environment in which we're required to have to play, as you said, in the orchestra and in the wind ensemble and play this chamber piece and play with these people, that when you kind of separate out of that and can just sit with the stuff that you've learned and are learning, and can kind of choose what things that you are saying yes to playing, things can settle even more. And that I started to feel the greatest gains really in the last 15 to 17 years after I married my husband, Nate, and our work together really has set up kind of the player and teacher that I am now. And what I'll say with that is that my husband did 2 degrees in trumpet performance too, before he went and became a medical doctor. And he went to Eastman and studied with Thompson. And then he went to BU and studied with Terry. And he is an incredibly efficient trumpet player and learned a lot from those 2 people. But where he started to have a lot of important aha moments was when he was in the anatomy lab, learning the anatomy and physiology of the body and how it's all designed, and respiratory mechanics and how this all interfaces, where he started to say, like, I think we could take some of the things in brass playing that tend to be analogy or tend to be like abstract concepts that we know to be true, and start to base some systems on what science and physics have to say already, and what we know from acoustics literature, and what we know based on what he was seeing in the anatomy lab about the diaphragm and the flexibility of the lungs, of the walls of the lungs, and all of this. And so through his understanding and actually his work with me over the last 15 years, we have developed kind of a system that I now deeply trust around inspiratory capacity. For instance, like when we take and vary our inspiratory capacity, it impacts intraoral pressure. And if we think about what we're giving to the trumpet at any given moment, then we can actually like think about, are we blowing through this phrase and giving the trumpet exactly what it needs in order to be as efficient and as easy as possible? And so with a lot more thought and planning and understanding about the interface between acoustics, physics, and respiratory mechanics, I've been able to develop an even greater way of being strategic about my own trumpet growth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's amazing. And I think that kind of points to, in many ways, how we've improved as trumpet players over the generations. Yeah. Through utilizing the information that's out there, whether it be the human body or the acoustics of the instruments and the mouthpieces we're using, things like that. Because as you're aware, like so much of what we're taught is just hand-me-down pedagogy from the teacher, and not a lot of trumpet players sit and read an anatomy book or read an acoustics book. That's amazing. I'd love to get into that more. We'll come back to it because I want to just in terms of your career. Yeah. You started out as a soloist. You played in the Dayton Symphony. Yeah. What were your aspirations? Did you want to be a soloist? Did you want to sit in an orchestra somewhere? Did you just whatever comes at me? What did it look like?
Yeah. I always knew instinctively that I loved being a soloist. And I think this has continued to refine and be more clear over the years. I never wanted the pressure and the job of a principal trumpet in a major symphony orchestra, number one. And I think, some people are just geared towards that, and I was not one of them. And I think the reason for me that I come back to the trumpet now is because at the end of the day, when I was in 8th grade and right now, it's about connection with my audience, the human part of me and them. And that's why I love soloing so much, is because it really is just me and my pianist, or me out in front of the orchestra and this audience. And for me, what feels most organic now is that kind of a scenario where I get to talk and be a human and invite there to be a reciprocity with questions. And that feels the most like me. And so and chamber music too. I mean, I've gotten to play with, of course, a lot of different chamber groups over the years, and they do that well, so well, because it's, intimate, and you are creating and curating concerts that are gonna entertain and make people laugh and make them think and make them feel. And it's not that orchestra doesn't do that. Of course it does, but there's a little less agency and autonomy in your spot, because you're connected to a much greater whole that's dictated by what the music director is doing in that moment. And that really works for some, but it wasn't exactly what jived for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, that kind of, we can get into all of the different things if you want, but at the end of the day, it comes down to playing music to connect genuinely with people.
So your focus was on soloing, chamber music, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I, with that little side, let's get back to respiratory mechanics.
Whatever you want, John.
Yeah. Because that's fascinating. I want to, you use the word efficiency a number of times, which is something here at the shop. It's one of our favorite words. But so what does efficiency mean in your context when you talk about it?
I mean, ultimately, it's about the definition, minimal effort for maximum result. And so we're always trying to ask ourselves when we're interfacing with our trumpet, can this be easier? And is this the minimum amount of work that I need for the kind of result that I'm trying to get? That's essentially the granular, small definition of efficiency. Mm-hmm. What that looks like for me, I mean, there's a masterclass that I did in 2019 at the National Trumpet Competition that has a lot of views on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out, where I break down sort of my strategic system for how I approach a new piece, for instance. And it has a lot to do with some of Jim Thompson's teachings, like this exercise called attack practice. We've been able to develop some data around to understand why attack practice works. And the way that Thompson teaches attack practice is you see a middle register note. It's kind of a mid-range golf swing. You're not going for a line drive and you're not going for a putt. It's just relaxed middle breath. And if we're translating that in respiratory mechanics speak, we're talking about inspiratory capacity being how much air you have in your lungs. And I'm thinking of a 50% breath, just middle point for anything really in the middle register. So if that is, let's say I start on an F or a B or something in the staff, I'm not going to take a huge high breath when I actually initially take my breath for that first note. And I'll explain more about that in a second. So attack practice, you're practicing just the right breath that yields the right kind of rate of flow and intraoral pressure to impact the note on a passive expiration. So we're trying to passively let the air come out of our body. So we would play a B, and then you would play it, and then you would take the horn off, breathe or rest, and then breathe, and then do it again. If we take 100% of our inspiratory capacity, like line drive, high swing, all of it, then what often happens, and we'll hear it in the sound, and we let the air go, is above the center of the pitch, brilliant, bright, sharp sound, which then we could either use more effort than we need to and manipulate it down with our chops, or we could then change again something about the breath that puts everything in balance. And that's all I mean when I'm talking about this respiratory mechanics and strategic work. Mm-hmm. So that exercise has been huge for helping me set up systems of trust and ease so that I see a note and I know exactly what that means in terms of the inspiratory capacity and what that yields in terms of, it's a lot of big words, how high or hot the intraoral pressure is coming at my chops. So we use the word pressure all the time with trumpet, but we're talking about how intensely we're holding on to pinky ring and pushing into our lips.
The octave key. That's the octave key. Yeah.
The octave key.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about pressure, we're just talking about the amount of force pushing up against either the inside of our body or the inside of our mouth, intraoral pressure. That kind of pressure, of course, is coming at our chops that we have to do something with, right? It's coming at our sound and our lips and the interface there. So the whole point is if we can change up a little bit about where we breathe to with a lot of thought and planning, that it minimizes the amount of work our chops have to do in order to play any given note in any range. So that's something I teach on a lot, and that's been really useful for everything from solo work to my first Brandenburg to all of the different things that I've been doing recently. Is when I have a system I can trust, I'm not then worried about, oh my gosh, is it going to work? Is my chops going to shut down? Am I going to make it? Am I going to die? Like all the things that our body does, but you have a system that yields consistent habits and consistent results. And that was essential for me. The second part of it is Thompson at the beginning of the Buzzing book talks about acoustical breaks, which we instinctively sort of know, like when we go on the very top of the staff, a G to an A feels like there's just this wall between it. You guys would know better than any, like where these are, that, you know, these spots around the harmonic series that where we have to kind of change something in order to make it feel effortless and easy. But there is an acoustical shift there. And all Thompson talks about here is that we need to increase a little bit of pressure in order to make sure that the lip air balance is there and present. So with the planning that I do in my music, I'm really conscious about middle register basically being no push. Like we're not trying to push anything heavy on the horn at all. And if we are, it's going to yield us high above the center of the sound. And we want it to all be relaxed and in the most easy balanced spot. When we cross into the upper register, though, anything between E and F, G and A, C and D, and beyond, we do have to lay our foot on the gas and increase pressure, rate of flow, but not before. And that's where we run into trouble. That's where I used to run into trouble all the time, is that we're expending way more energy than we need to on the trumpet in areas that we don't, and not expending it when we do, right? And so learning about all of this has meant that I've been able to be a little bit smarter about my preparation. And then, of course, a little bit more consistent in the performances as well.
That's a great explanation. We should. There's a book in the works here with manufacturers and teachers, like about bridging the great divide here.
It's super important. Yeah. I mean, we would love to have that conversation.
Taking the acoustics, the actual physics of the mouthpiece and the instrument with the physics of your body, the anatomy of your body, and getting them to match up, so that you're not overblowing the harmonics, overblowing the acoustics of the instrument, and then thus doing too much work. Yeah,
that's right.
Actually, absolutely amazing to hear it put that way. And so then what does that preparation look like? Let's say you're working on it. Let's bring up the Brandenburg, because I saw in your social media, that was a month or two ago, relatively recently. And also incredible to think about someone who, like you said, high B flat, high C was difficult for you. And now you're, knocking a home run on the Brandenburg. So how did this kind of mechanics work in your preparation for something like the Brandenburg?
Yeah, I mean, the Brandenburg is its own little marathon that we have to prepare for well. And there's reasons that, orchestral musicians have statements in their contracts that say, like, you can't play anything major for 2 or 3 weeks before a Brandenburg, just in the sense of the type of small aperture and finesse that it takes in the training is just not something you want to do right after you play an Alpine, for instance, right? So different skill sets here. For me, what this really looked like was I worked a lot on whisper tones, like the threshold right between sound and air, where the lips are just barely touching and really, really small. And I worked on that quite a lot. I worked on really soft chromatics on the piccolo and beyond, making the distance between intervals as small as they could possibly be in terms of how I'm traveling between notes. I trained, I would say, for 6 months, it was kind of on my purview, right? You're always thinking about the Brandenburg and setting things up and doing that. But the actual detailed, where am I going to breathe and how much and when work probably really intensely started in the last 2 months. for instance, like the A's were not coming out. Like I could not get the right balance unless I did the venting thing. And that's weird because it doesn't sound exactly the same. And I kept telling myself, which I tell my students too, like in the Haydn, it's not about the B flat, and the Brandenburg, it's not really all about the A's, but we all know that we want to be able to access them with ease and with balance. Mm-hmm. I was talking to someone earlier, like nothing about the upper register is quote easy or relaxed. There's always going to be some aspect of tension, right? Tension in balance that we're trying to walk on this little tightrope. But what the A part, for instance, really meant is that number one, I needed to not breathe as often. And I made this whole entire plan that every time I was sipping between those eighth note little rests, ba-beep, ba-ba, ba-beep, ba-ba, I was building up extra tension, which was horrible. Like it would not work. Nothing would come out. So first thing was I eliminated actually all of the breaths through that entire section and was very careful about where I took the breath when. Second was I focused mostly on not playing the A's for a couple of weeks and making sure that the ascent up was fully in balance without the A being a part of what I was going to try to go for. And when I got the arpeggios fully in balance, then laying my foot ever so slightly on the gas in the moment on the concert for the A's all came out. But that kind of training is not what we love because we want to know that it's always there. And that was really difficult for me because I wasn't sure even up until the moment that all of those things were going to come out right. And I was making tweaks to my plan even the day before based on what I heard in rehearsals. What I will tell you, though, is like next time I do the Brandenburg, which I have one on the books next year, I think, pretty soon, we're going to finalize that one, is that the system that I built and that was able to execute really pretty well. My kids even gave me like, that was about 95%, Mom. I was like, I'll take 95% for my first Brandenburg. I like that. I was like, not that I need your grade.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
But that like I have a system that I know I worked on that my body will remember that I can trust. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of, when I think about the kind of preparation that I do when I'm doing it really well, it's one of strategy, thought. And the other thing I would say here too, is that the trumpet is constantly giving us data and feedback. And what we tend to do, I'll speak for myself, is I'm just like, well, that was crap. Let's do it again. Or that sounded bad. Let's do that again. Rather than saying like, what was bad? What am I looking for more of? And what did the sound tell me that I need to change? And so the way that my own trumpet practice has dramatically changed is that it's coming much more from a place of data and relationship, that I'm in a relationship with this piece of metal, for better or worse. And it wants me to be kind, and it's going to teach me and tell me what it needs me to change or do more or less of. And the problem is we just don't always listen. And that's what I'm really trying to work on now still as I'm continuing to grow in my skills. And that's why strategy and data has been hugely helpful for helping me quiet some of the critic voices that tend to come up as well with our musical practice. So.
Yeah. The voice in our head, which is, I mean, that's a whole other podcast, but actually we want to talk a little bit about that as well. But so, I mean, let's go to the moment you're walking on stage, because that's the mental approach. I mean, you've done all this preparation, you have your plans, like what's going through your head as you're walking on stage? Do you have a plan for that? Do you have a process once you switch into performance mode?
I do. Yeah. I mean, and it very much comes down to the ability of me to trust the process and the preparation. If I have not done the preparation and diligent practice, I cannot trick my body into not feeling calm, right? Like, or not feeling afraid. I can't, there's no substitute for good prep. But if I know that I am prepared and that I'm in the best place that I can be, or that in light of all of the chaos that's around, I'm going to show up and do the best that I can in this moment, then that's what I tell myself, is that you're prepared. You can trust the work that you've done. Music is an incredible gift, and they're there to enjoy the gift that you bring. And I have to play that on loop still all the time, or else we lose sight of what we do this for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you did it. You knocked out the Brandenburg.
Did it.
And you got another one coming up next year. I want to rewind a little bit because we kind of left off with you finishing your artistic diploma.
Yeah.
What was that kind of that gray area then in terms of doing your embouchure change or your, fixing everything to then jumping into a professional career? Were you freelancing during that time during your artist diploma, or were you just, you've mentioned you were basically just focusing on getting things together.
Yeah.
What was that transition like then into the working world?
Yeah. So I did my 2 years in Boston, freelanced a little bit at the end, but I moved back to Cincinnati at the end of my time in Boston and was able to resume my job with the Dayton Philharmonic, which held it for me for those 2 years.
That's right. You were on leave from there.
Leave,
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
So I went back to my orchestra job, played, of course, principal with the Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra. That was my first season with them. Did a lot of educational shows. My husband and I developed a duo concert where we did a show called Art and Music Making the Connection. And we performed in like 60 schools as a trumpet duo and talked about the connection between music and art history over time and how that changed. And that was really fun to do. And it kept my husband, in music while he was starting all of his post-bac pre-med classes in preparation for medical school. And then we did that for a couple of years in Cincinnati, and then it was clear that we were going to be moving for him to go to medical school in Minnesota. And he did his medical training at the Mayo Clinic. And in Rochester, Minnesota, he was really worried that I would not have anything to do because it's a little cornfield, about an hour and a half outside of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do either, except that I knew that I wanted to teach. And so I developed a studio pretty quickly when I was there of a lot of private students. I was able to teach for a year at St. Olaf College while Marty Hodel went on sabbatical. And it was also a time where I kind of had my second reckoning with, do I like the trumpet anymore? Was because of all of my years in competition and the identity that got very much mashed with perfectionism being like the litmus test of how great something was and how good of a mood I would be in after a performance. Like if I missed a whole bunch of things, I was just in a like raunchy, horrible mood and couldn't engage with the humans that I love until I had been miserable for a day or two. Nobody knows what that's like. I realized that I wasn't sure if I wanted to play trumpet forever. And I wasn't sure if it actually made me happy, like the job of the trumpet. And I told you before that a lot of what I do now with the trumpet is very much based in this. Does this give me the chance to make a genuine and authentic connection with my audience? And that realization really came from my very first major trumpet break on purpose. And this was the break that I took after I'd had my daughter. I think I'd lost my joy. Like I didn't know why I was doing this anymore. And it was not connected to anything that I loved anymore. And I took a 6-month break from all performing. I said, no more. I want to see if I even like this. And I want to explore what else I would also want to do if it's not the trumpet. Because when you're kind of a child prodigy and you grow up and everyone telling you this is going to be your life, you're too good to not, you know that there's more to you, the human, but you're never giving that chance to even explore it because that was the lot that was given to me. And I knew that I was actually really passionate about the mental health and psychology side of the performing arts, but just humans generally, like how we are in the world. And really passionate about doing it actually with music conservatory students, because I felt even in my own training that it was very myopic. Like you are this, you sell your soul for this, you do all this and you get the job, instead of really nurturing the whole. And so I started taking classes in clinical psych and did my undergrad classes, started a master's in marriage and family therapy, with the hope that I would go on and continue this degree. But in the end, I came back to the trumpet after those 6 months and was able to really start to say yes to the things that brought me a lot of joy. And if I got into something that wasn't quite it, I could easily let that go and just say, hey, that was great. Not sure that's for me forever. And I was able to really start to mash that up with more of this mental health, mental resilience work that I had instinctively been doing with myself as we've been talking about this hour, but also the work I really wanted to be doing with musicians more broadly. And so that's what happened through there.
Interesting. And so that, I mean, I was starting to get a good picture of where we are today, these little puzzle pieces. And I'm just like, so the 6 months you took off, was that like you gave yourself 6 months, like to the day, and you said, I'm going to make a decision after 6 months? Or was it a thing where
I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that I had an Easter gig that I thought I was going to have to play. So I knew I was going to get it back out and see what it felt like at that Easter gig. And then I remember I'd gotten called to play at ITG, and it was an American female soloist recital. And it was me and Mary Bowden and Barbara Hull, the three of us. And I was like, oh, if there was ever a re-entry into Does This Bring Me Joy, then let's just do it at the ITG.
1,000 trumpet players. That's so. I mean, what do you think it was about the trumpet that brought you back, as opposed to going off into therapy or family counseling, something like that?
I still like the trumpet. I mean, I think my husband's just like, would you be okay if the trumpet went away? I mean, yes, but you still love to perform, and you actually love to practice. And there is something for me about the practice every day, and the time with myself, and the quiet and the exploring of my sound, and the growth part of that I knew that I still really did like and do like, that I wasn't ready to just say that's not it. But I think for me, adding this other dimension to my life actually made me much better at the trumpet in a weird way, because my identity wasn't just only this thing, but it had a lot more depth. Like, I love doing this work with students and with pros, and with whether we're talking about respiratory mechanics, but it's tied with trust. It's tied with mental resilience. Like, the trumpet part brings validity to the work that I'm doing here too. And they serve each other now. And that's why my life and my career, yes, are incredibly multifaceted, but they feel also deeply integrated. Like, they're not separate anymore. They're all really tied. And I don't want to let the trumpet go, because it absolutely serves the validity of the other work that I do on myself, most importantly, and with clients in our field too. So.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of what you were saying that Steve Emery did with you as well, integrating all of these different, I don't want to say disciplines, but aspects of your life into just your art form and what you do. Well, thank you for filling us in on the career. I'm glad I asked, because it was fascinating. And then, you do coaching now. You teach at the Cincinnati Conservatory, but you also do coaching. Let me throw this at you. Outside of trumpet playing, what are 2 or 3 things you would recommend players do to improve themselves?
The first thing I always say is, don't be afraid of getting therapy. Like, I think cognitive behavioral therapy and internal family systems and emotion focused therapy are 3 of my favorite things that can really help us to sort of detach ourselves and our identities from this piece of metal that we pick up every day, so that when we pick up the piece of metal, we remember the humans that we are. And that's first. There's a couple of books that have been absolutely essential for me in this kind of mental resilience work, but also in just my acceptance of the bravery and authenticity that the arts are and what we do. And the book that actually changed my life during this 6-month break was a book by Brené Brown called The Gifts of Imperfection, Letting Go of Who You're Not and Embracing Who You Are. It's basically like textbook, all the things that we end up equating as a part of our worth, whether it's the perfectionism or the perfect house or the, whatever it is. And it helps you sort of unwind and be kind and be human with each other. And then I think outside of the trumpet, I say this to a lot of my students, like, what do you like to do outside of the trumpet? Like, what else brings you joy? You, the human, outside of you attached to this piece of metal, like, what do you like? And if there isn't like an immediate answer, like, what sounds fun or what are you curious about? Take a dance class, go do improv, like take an acting, like so many different things that you would be absolutely blown away at how much it would intersect in some way with your trumpet life, or just add depth and beauty to your life generally that would make you happier and healthier when you sit down and have the piece of metal in your hand. So those are 3 things. And then journaling. Like, I'm a big self-care journaling, like, know your own inner dialogue, be honest about how you show up and talk to yourself, and get really clear about what matters and what you want and need each day. And those things can really help inform kind of a healthier way of being, trumpet or not.
Great advice. And it's something just in my own journey, we kind of gloss over that stuff.
We do.
You really have to be intentional about it. And I mean, I tell myself I should journal every day, and I don't, but I do other things. And it's usually in the most difficult times that, if you have that habit, you can rely on it and it gets you through. Yeah. And then if you're like me and you don't do it regularly, that's the thing that drops first, and then the downward spiral. But seriously, we come through, a lot of folks come through here, and it's amazing how many successful musicians don't seem happy, or they don't seem fulfilled.
It's the truth. That's the truth.
They're tied to the piece of metal, and even if they're financially successful, they don't have fulfillment in what they do,
That's right.
And so I think like the kinds of things you're talking about allows us to find that journey so we can have both.
That's
right?
The goal.
Yeah.
And I think it's true that, like, even our education systems don't set people up to even start to look at that. Right. And I mean, I remember I was just teaching at Royal College in London a couple of weeks ago, and some of my first questions to these kids are like, what do you like about music? And it's like a little bit of a like, oh yeah, we like this thing. Okay. What do I like? Right. And it's this, okay. Now that completely informs the way that I'm going to play this peskin for you, or this jolivet for you. Like, I'm bringing this because that's how I'm uniquely designed to show up. I like this about music. I like this about, right. And so we've got to help all of us come back to the why of, what do we do this for? Why do we keep putting our lips to this funny hollow tube every day? And what keeps us wanting to get better. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you started a program at Longy, right? That involved this. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah. So Longy was in a process of changing their curriculum fully to something called the Catalyst curriculum, where students had sort of a lot of agency and autonomy over the 2-year graduate degree. So they can kind of choose their own classes and kind of design a graduate education based on what they wanted to do. But with that, they needed a coaching program to sort of help facilitate their knowledge of their values, their knowledge of the field, the knowledge of themselves, so that they can make really clear, informed decisions about the classes they take and then the trajectory of their life. So they asked me to build a coaching program to become a coach, and then to train other faculty and staff in the language of coaching, which is not that it's going to take away from the way that they naturally teach, but it will help them to ask even more powerful and effective questions of their students, and to help them dig deep into, maybe that performance didn't go well, or that rehearsal felt really off. Like, what about that didn't maybe jive with your values or your way of being in the world? Help them to know themselves a little bit better. We all know, as trumpet teachers, we tend to be more like half counselor, half trumpet teacher anyway. And so getting these coaching skills into the hands of music educators is actually quite a passion of mine, because I think we can do a better job of helping our students teach themselves and understand themselves, rather than just immediately assuming that we have the answer and our experience is going to be the way that their experience goes. So that whole program I got to kind of design from the ground up, and it was really useful in seeing how this could work at a conservatory level. And yeah, it still exists at Longy today in a slightly different iteration than when I was there, but really, really thankful that I got to play with that environment there.
Another thing I want to bring up is, and this remind me, I think this was last year, you joined the Canadian Brass. Was it 2 years ago now? I can't keep track of time.
Time does fly. I finished my final concert with them at the end of April last year, and then I got to play one more time with them in August. But yeah, a year ago now. Was that it had to have been a shift, because they tour all the time. But first of all, tell us how that came about, and then what that experience is like. We've had probably more U.S. presidents than trumpet players in the Canadian Brass. Yeah. I mean, when you get a call like that, it's like, somebody who plays basketball getting their shot at the NBA, right? This is a really big deal in our field. We all know the prominence that Canadian brass has played. And so when the invitation came as would this be something that you could fit into your life right now? It was very much something that I took with my family in mind and with the thought that we're going to try this out for this year to see how this goes and feels to all of us. I mean, my children are 10 and 12. So they're at a wonderful age, both in their sense of independence, but they have different needs of us too. It would have been a lot harder if they were really young than at this age. So yeah, I mean, the invitation came, played a couple of shows with them. The hard part about it was that I'd already had a lot of my solo and residencies and coaching work already really booked for the year. And then they called, and then I had to make sure that all of the Canadian brass stuff fit in the midst of what was already a pretty busy touring life. So the year was insane because I did both of the tours. I did all of my solo stuff and all the Canadian brass tours, and I just wasn't home. And even the times when I wasn't on tour with Canadian brass, I was playing solo recitals and doing all the other stuff. So on the one hand, it was insane on my family. On the other hand, it gave me a chance to sort of look at both. Like, where do I fit? Where do I feel like my light can be most useful in the world? Like, how does this fit in terms of the grand scheme of what I want to be doing and how I want to show up? And I'm so thankful for the time that I had with Canadian brass, and I learned a ton, and I got to play in some of the coolest concert halls of my life, truly. Like, I'll always say that the Berlin Philharmonic Chamber Hall is the top hall of my life. I'll never play in a place better. It was so wonderful, and many peak experiences came from that year of travel. And what's really clear is that I love this very integrated, solo and coaching and workshops and kind of variety filled life of teaching where I get to really keep my hand in all of them. And I knew that the travel with our family and all of that just wasn't going to be in the long run sustainable for all of the parts. So it was cool, and I'm really thankful that I got the opportunity.
Did you get to keep the sneakers?
Oh yeah, kept the sneakers. Absolutely.
Yes. And then, so speaking of solo career, this is something that, I mean, there's not a book written this, or if there is, I'm not familiar with it. Like, I mean, how do you develop a career as a soloist? I mean, that's got to even be more difficult, obviously, than winning a symphony position or freelancing or things like that. So what advice could you give for someone who wants to be a soloist and perform recitals and do residencies, things like that?
I mean, it's always what makes you unique, what sets you apart from all the other players, and how can you live more deeply into the thing that makes you unique. I'm different than Mary. I'm different than Rex. I'm different than all of these other people. And we each have our lane and our place to be in the world. And there's room for all of us. To develop this, it really comes down for me to cultivating relationships and maintaining relationships and being kind and genuine and following up and being willing to put yourself out there and accept lots of no's and accept quite a few yeses. And that's a nature of our field. I think some soloists have a lot of success with management, being able to kind of get them into the, better recital series and on the bigger stages with orchestras. And that can get you to the presenters that are doing all of that stuff. For me, that hasn't necessarily been my path because I really like to have a little bit of the ownership and flexibility of my schedule because it's a massively difficult puzzle to maintain. So that just looks like reaching out to conductors that I know and sharing that I have this super cool recorder concerto that I have now string orchestra versions to. And here's the recording you can listen to. And I would love to play it with your orchestra. And if they come back and say, not this season, but let's look at next, then that's how this stuff builds. And so at least for me, most of the time that I send an ask, it's based on a relationship that I've had over all of these years, right? We talked about NTC. We talked about conductors that you've met over the years in your gigs. And if you maintain that and you show up and you have something that helps them remember who you are, then there's a chance that you might be on their radar for these, solo opportunities. The competitions, of course, are a way to kind of get your name out there into those spaces. And then, of course, for management things like the Concert Artists Guild competitions and all of that are a way to kind of start in that direction. Yeah, but that's how it's looked for me, at least. Just emails and connections and putting yourself out there.
And finding your own lane. I think that's important because you're not, you don't want to be exact copies of the folks that came before you or someone who's
doing it
in the same market as you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty now. If you wouldn't mind telling me do you have a daily routine, warm up, maintenance, that sort of thing? What does that look like?
We are on the Trumpet podcast after all.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been doing the same warm up routine for probably the last 15 years. And it starts with the 6 notes of Flexus, Laurie Frank's book, the Caruso 6 notes, but I don't tend to make it very isometric in like the calisthenic way, but just in a sound exploration way, soft lip bends, letting any tension be out of the sound, exploring where my sound and the interface between my breath and sound is that day on those 6 notes. I'll do an exercise by a trumpet player by the name of Jay Rossetto called Interval Studies. He has a book out that this is from, and it's what I call my ADHD long tones. I don't like long tones, but I like to listen carefully to my sound, and I like to think of moving notes just like long tones. How connected are we moving from one note to the next? And that really helps set up that listening for me. From there, I do Jim Thompson's buzzing book, 1 through 4 and 6 and 9. 9 is the pedal tones. And I'd say with this isn't for everybody, but I have found that if you treat the mouthpiece not like it is the resonator that the trumpet is, but that it is a tool for helping you let go of some tension and lightly interfacing with a vibration, it can be useful. So I buzz really softly, and I do not try to create heavy resonance on the mouthpiece in any way, shape, or form, but I find that buzzing can be really useful. It's not for everybody, but it has really helped me. So buzzing 1 through 4, 6, and 9. And then I do attack practice. And attack practice is, again, we've talked about this hour and a half, that I really make sure that I'm getting the right height and inspiratory capacity breath to set up a passive expiration in the most relaxed resonant sound on every note of the range on every instrument that I play. So attack practice is where I integrate my small horns into my fundamentals. It's where I'll do some attacks on B flat, and then I'll go to flugelhorn, and then I'll jump to E flat, and then I'll do piccolo. And I'm making sure that I can easily shift between at least 5 horns, which is what I typically play in a solo recital, in my warm-up routine, so that everything feels as easy when I'm shifting, and then I know exactly the right kind of breath I need for any note that I'm coming in on in any dynamic, any range. From there, usually I'll add just a little bit more piccolo flexibility, Clark's slurs. That's about it, really. And then I'll start to look at whatever repertoire I have that week and, anything that is needed there. But that's pretty much the routine every day, consistently.
Every day, even when you're on the road, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm a fan of taking some time off too, but that is really the routine that is absolutely steadfast for me.
Wow. And you brought up the 5 horns you use in your recitals. Normally, this is a short section, but take as long as you need. What equipment you're using? I know you endorse GR mouthpieces.
I do.
You want to talk about those a little bit? And then, of course, let's go through the horns.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So I've been playing Yamaha for a while, and I did just sign on the dotted line to become a Yamaha artist.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So I'll tell you the names. I'm really bad at models. We've got...
And I have a hard time keeping track of the Yamaha models.
I don't even know. Is this going to be helpful? The YCR 63352. Do you know what that is?
It's a Yamaha.
Is this going to be useful? Anyway, okay.
It'll be useful to the folks listening who know this kind of stuff.
Okay, YFH 6310Z.
The flugel. It's a shoe flugel. Yeah, it's a good one.
And then I play YTR 9445CH.
Okay. Yeah.
YTR 9610. Come on, John. Just kidding.
I'm terrible at these.
Me too.
I can align them, but don't tell me which model they are.
YTR 8335LA.
Okay, there's the Bergeron. I know that one. Yeah.
And that one actually is interesting. I just picked out this one, added some heavy valve caps to the bottom. And I was looking for a lightness, actually, like a really whispery sound, but I also wanted it to have like a depth for this Sibelius transcription that I play. And with GR mouthpieces and the kind of the combo of this horn doesn't light up like you would think a Bergeron model would. It's got a lot of colors, sensitive colors to it. So I love it. They say Bergeron and they think different things. So
yeah. And well, it's interesting not to get into it, but I mean, that horn is bigger than people think it is. Because I mean, Wayne's a strong player, and even though he's known for the high notes, it's yeah. I really love it. It's got a lot. And for me, I'm a light finesse player. It really does that well. And the thing that I would say, the reason that I'm a Yamaha artist too, is that they do really give you this kind of blank canvas with their instruments in order for you to be the artist that you are, right? And that's what I've really found to be true. I've been playing my Yamaha E-flat and flugel have been mainstays for my whole entire career. And then these other horns are newer additions to my ensemble of instruments. But my favorite new addition of all of these, I don't know if this is it, YTR 9835 is the last one that they put in my Yamaha list, is their cornet. I've been playing Smith Watkins cornets for a while, but I haven't found that the low register has been super, super solid and in tune. And I just got this Yamaha cornet. I don't remember exactly which one of those that it is, but I tell you, like my Carnival of Venices and some stuff I did in England recently, just it has a beautiful a bit of a bright cornet sound. Of course, if I played your like little Dennis Wick cornet V shape, it'd probably be fine. It would sound like the British guys, but it's a gorgeous cornet that I just love playing. It's very even across the registers. So those are the instruments that I play now. Wonderful. Do you know which GR model? Do you have your own model, or is
it? Oh yeah. I've been with GR since I was like 20, and he's been fitting me. And what's interesting about my GR fitting journey is that as I've gotten more and more efficient, my mouthpiece size has gotten a bit smaller. And so I've refitted a couple of times with Gary over the years. Steve Emery himself is a GR mouthpiece fitter, so he can do that sort of testing now. And I don't know how much longer Gary will be in the business, but I've been so thankful for Gary's support over these years. And he's he's Uncle Gary to our family. He's Uncle Gary to my kids. And he's a very dear friend of our families, and we love him. Yeah. I play the G66 series. And so all of my horns, I said this recently in an Instagram reel, that like the reason it's easy to switch between horns is that the rim is the same. It's the G66, whether I have flugel in my hand or E flat in my hand. It's just different in terms of the shank and the interface between the trumpets, except for my piccolo, and I play a G62P. I think it's just 62P. It's a lot smaller, but it feels exactly right for what I need for the piccolo stuff.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah, we got geeky. I love it. We brought up heavy valve caps. That's great. Only took us an hour and 13 minutes, but we did it.
We did it. My husband even got me like green valve tops, and he's like, "Your favorite color is green, and you do all this soloing, so now you have flashy green." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm so not a gear head.
I love
Although
it.
I do have a Reeves valve alignment on my box C that I play for most of my chamber orchestra stuff, and it's still the best horn. In fact, it's the horn I stole from my husband, and it's the horn that Terry Everson said to my husband, if he ever gets rid of it, Terry's buying it. So that's y'all right there.
Appreciate it. And I know we're running out of time here. I did want to bring up, you did released an album last year, Upcycle, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's my first official album. I had a hymn album that I released in 2007 that was never like a real release. This is my first one with a label and actually on Spotify and iTunes. It's all new transcriptions for trumpet and piano, mostly of piano music. So we've got everything from the Clara Schumann piano sonata, which was only discovered in 1991, but written back in the mid 1800s. And it is a gorgeous sonata now for trumpet and piano. I'll be playing it at the International Trumpet Guild coming up in May. And it's 4 movements, and it has E flat and cornet and C. And it's just an incredible romantic piece of music. Another piece that I love that I've mentioned a little bit earlier, the San Martini Recorder Concerto is on there, and it's like the best of Hummel and Haydn times 50. So really hard and flashy and virtuosic, and really requires, as we've been talking about, efficiency in terms of minimal amount of air used to be able to make long phrases as a recorder would. So that's been a great skill set to develop. There's Bach and Albanese and Rachmaninoff and Sibelius on the album too. And all of these transcriptions were done for me by my husband, Nathan Tighe. And if people like it, they can go and actually work on the transcriptions themselves. All of the arrangements are available for purchase, and you can go to Maple Rise Music, MAPLE rise, R-I-S-E, music.com. And you can buy any of those PDFs.
Cool. And we'll have the links to all of these down in the description and show notes so folks can, who can't spell or want to just click instead of search,
Perfect.
Make it as easy as possible. And then anything coming up in the pipeline? You going to do a volume 2 or anything you can share?
Volume 2. Yeah. We have, I think he has about 50 more minutes of transcriptions ready to go that I'll probably perform a couple of new things that are not on the album at ITG. So yeah, there are quite a few things coming up that volume 2 potentially in the works. And yeah, that'll be it. So if you're at ITG, hopefully you guys can come hear some of the stuff live. So it'll be fun.
Wonderful. Well, Ashley, absolute pleasure to have you on here. We have your website, ashleyhalltighe.com, and that's Tighe.
Yep.
For those of you who do like to spell it out, and we'll have the links to your website. Anywhere else, social media?
Yep, I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's at Ashley Hall-Tighe, so you can find me there. I have some Facebook, but I'm much more active on Instagram, so go over there and follow me.
Yeah, we'll have all of the links to that stuff and a wonderful website. You have your presentations on there and links to your YouTube and a lot of great resources and information for folks. So I highly recommend checking it out. And then we'll have to do volume 2 when the next album comes out.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll have you on here. Ashley, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, I have one last question for you that I ask all my guests. If you can leave our listeners with your best piece of advice, what would that be?
To quote Brene Brown, talk to yourself like you would talk to someone you love.
Yeah, I love Brene, and that's a wonderful place to put that advice. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm reminded time and time again that I'm the luckiest person in the world. This is my job to get to interview these wonderful players, and Ashley is no exception. We have never met. Well, that's not true. She did a valve alignment, and I looked up her record, and I did the alignment. So chances are we did meet at an ITG at some point 10 years ago or so. And honestly, I don't remember. I'll blame it on the parent brain or maybe all of the high Gs that one hears in the vendor room of ITG. Nonetheless, this was the first time we had a significant conversation, and what a pleasure it was. So thank you, Ashley, for sharing your experiences, your life story up to this point so far. I'm really excited to see what you have up next, and especially, man, your story of being a prodigy, reaching success at such a young age, winning NTC in, what did she say, 7th or 8th grade, and how she defined herself by the competitions and the auditions, and then in her mid-20s to just start over again, realizing that there was, she was coming up to a cliff, and the inevitable would have happened if she didn't start over again and dedicate herself to playing low Cs and low Gs, lower register, and just starting from scratch again, and to build herself back up from that. Just story of dedication and perseverance. It's why we do this podcast. Life is not a straight line. Our musical journey is not a straight line. And these stories just reinforce that time and time again. So I appreciate, Ashley, your honesty, your authenticity, all the things you talk about, and where your career has taken you. And I just absolutely love it. This is one of those episodes I'm going to go back and listen again and again for myself. AshleyHallTighe.com. Tighe is Tighe. We'll make sure to have the links to not only her website, but her social media, all so you can follow her. Make sure she posts wonderful content on social media, on Instagram. I'm a regular follower of her content. So we'll make sure we have all the links to those down below in the description of the podcast and, of course, on the show notes. We have some great podcasts coming up. Speaking of IWBC, I interviewed the founder of the International Women's Brass Conference, Susan Slaughter, not only the founder of IWBC, but the principal trumpet of the St. Louis Symphony for 40 years. And, oh, by the way, the first female principal brass player in a major orchestra ever. Just an incredible interview. You're not going to believe some of the stories. Well, you might believe some of the stories that are so unfortunate in this world. But speaking of perseverance and dedication to her craft, Susan is just an amazing individual. So you're not going to want to miss that interview. That should be up next. We also have Eric Baker. You'll know him as Trumpet's mic'd up, the viral sensation on TikTok and Instagram, but also a fine trumpet player and educator in his own right. Although we have a fun conversation about how he practiced all those years so that he could be known on social media. But it's actually a beautiful conversation about bringing people together. And so you're not going to want to miss that one. That's coming up. I have Liesl Whitaker. Again, man, talk about groundbreaking, breaking the glass ceiling. Liesl's amazing lead player and was the first female lead player in a military band, the Ambassadors and the Army Blues, among many other things. I think she's playing on Broadway now. And Marie Speziali, talk about groundbreaking, and Ashley talked about her in this interview. I'm excited to say she'll be on a future episode as well. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like, hit that notifications button if you're on YouTube, now that we're prominently there as well, so you don't miss an episode. And if you're interested in brass playing outside of the trumpet world, we have the Trombone Corner podcast that Noah Gladstone and I co-host together. And we just had a great episode with Michael Dees, a fabulous jazz trombonist, again, among many other things that he does. And then the Horn Signal, the horn podcast that I co-host with Preston Shepard and I. We're at episode 5 now. Still a young podcast, but we've already had some great players from the LA area and Jacksonville, Kate Caliendo, Kate Warren, a lot of fabulous players on the Horn Signal so far, even though we're less than a year in. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening. See you next episode. Until next time, let's go out and make some music.